The morning the roof of their tiny mud house finally collapsed. It wasn't the rain that broke that family. It was the silence that followed. Because a father who had spent 25 years fighting the world stood there with empty hands while his son looked at the broken walls and whispered the most dangerous sentence any man can ever say: "My life is over." The neighbors walked past shaking their heads. The muddy fields swallowed the last crop they had borrowed money to grow. And even the old bull tied outside looked hungrier than hope itself. Yet the greatest loss that day wasn't their home. It was the attitude inside that young man's heart. Because sometimes life doesn't destroy your future first. It destroys the way you choose to see it. The boy was only 19, wearing the same faded mustard kurta he had owned for years. And every morning he woke up carrying anger heavier than the water buckets his mother carried from the village well. Blaming poverty, blaming fate, blaming the government, blaming every person who had ever looked down on his family, while his father quietly repaired broken fences with bleeding hands and his mother served dinner pretending she wasn't hungry so her son could eat one extra roti. One evening his father looked at him with tired hazel eyes and said, "Son, we have lost land before. We have lost money before. But don't lose the way you stand." Yet the boy turned away, convinced that the world had already decided he would remain poor forever. And with every complaint he made, every excuse he repeated, and every person he envied, he built another invisible prison around his own mind. Days became weeks, opportunities walked past him like strangers on an empty road. And while his circumstances stayed difficult, his attitude made them impossible. Then one afternoon, after another failed attempt to find work, the boy sat beneath an old banyan tree outside the village, exhausted, defeated, and angry at everyone except himself, when an elderly traveler stopped beside him and asked a question, so simple it felt almost cruel. If two men walk through the same storm, why does one become stronger while the other becomes bitter? The boy had no answer. The old man smiled and drew two lines in the dirt before saying, "Rain falls on everyone. But only one man decides whether he will build with the mud or drown in it." That night the boy couldn't sleep because, for the first time, he realized his greatest enemy had never been poverty. It had been the attitude he carried into every sunrise. Years before either of them had been born, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts," and Epictetus reminded us that we cannot control what happens to us, only how we respond, because Stoicism was never about pretending life is easy. It was about refusing to let hardship decide who you become. The world will always give you reasons to quit, but your attitude decides whether those reasons become excuses or fuel. The next morning nothing magical happened. The roof was still broken, the debt still existed, and the fields were still wet with failure. Yet something inside the young man had changed forever because instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he started asking, "What can I do today?" He woke before sunrise, worked beside his father without complaint, learned new skills whenever he could, accepted every small opportunity with gratitude instead of pride. And while other people waited for perfect conditions, he kept moving one determined step at a time until those tiny steps became habits. Those habits became confidence. And that confidence slowly built a life stronger than the house they had once lost. Years later, people in the same village called him lucky. But they never saw the mornings when he chose discipline instead of excuses, gratitude instead of bitterness, and courage instead of self-pity. Because success didn't begin the day money arrived. It began the day his attitude changed. Your circumstances may not change today, tomorrow, or even this year. But the attitude you choose after watching this video can change before you even stand up. And that single decision might become the turning point your future self will thank you for. Because the strongest men are not those who face the easiest lives. They are the ones who refuse to surrender their mindset when life becomes unbearable. Comment attitude if you're ready to rebuild. And remember, the next story might reveal the one habit that silently separates ordinary men from the truly unstoppable.